Now that we have gone through the Excel interface, let's start building an actual spreadsheet and learn some basic formatting along the way. Let's begin by clicking on cell A1 and typing the title Monthly Budgeting Spreadsheet. To get out of editing mode, we need to either press enter or click on any other cell. Let's select our cell A1 again. The text is too long to fit comfortably in a single cell, so we can increase the column width. Hover your mouse over the boundary between two column headers until the cursor changes to a double-headed arrow. This is called column resize handle. We can click and drag this handle to the right or to the left to increase or decrease the column width. Instead of increasing column width, we can merge multiple cells and center the title using merge and center option on the home tab. To do that, first let's decrease our column A to the normal size again. Then we need to select the cells we want to merge. To select the cells, we have to click and drag those cells until they get highlighted, and then we select an option merge and center from home tab. We can use alignment buttons to left align, center align, or right align our text. Similarly, we can use vertical alignment option too. Let me increase the row height slightly so you can see these alignment options more clearly. When I hover over the boundary between two row numbers, the cursor again changes to double-headed arrow. This is called row size handle. We can click and drag it up or down to decrease or increase the row height. In this case, I'll drag it down to increase the row height. Let's center align our text horizontally first before we check our vertical alignment option. We can click on top align button to align our text to the top of the cell, or center align or the bottom align options. If we want to remove merge and center formatting from these cells, I have to select the cell again and click merge and center button one more time, and this will remove the merge and center formatting from these cells. Let me center align my text vertically again. Another option is wrap text. Rather than increasing the column width, wrap text displays the content on multiple lines within the same cell. Let me increase the row size a bit more so that we can see our text properly. You can see our text has wrapped within the cell now in a multiple lines. Let me undo those changes using Ctrl Z shortcut keys and return to our original title. To redo previous steps, we can also use Ctrl Y. Rather than resizing columns, wrapping text, or merging cells, there is an even better approach. To do this, first we have to select the cells upon which we want to center our title. Let's select it till column F, and then we need to open the format cell dialog box. We can do that from a right click menu, or we can use the shortcut keys of Ctrl 1. Once the format cells dialog box is open, we would click on alignment tab, and in a horizontal section we would select an option called center across selection. Unlike merging and centering, this method keeps all columns independent, which makes working with data much easier later on. Since the cells remains separate, as you can see here, that the cells haven't merged, but the title is being centered along those cells. It helps maintain a consistent worksheet structure and avoids many of the problems that merged cells can cause. Now let's add the month headers. I would click onto cell B2. I will start by typing Jan in cell B2. When I press tab on the keyboard, Excel moves me to the next cell on the right. I'll type Feb and press tab again. Let's type March and press tab to move to the next cell. As you can see, typing each month one by one works, but there's a much faster way of using autofill. I'll delete the values and go back to Jan. To do that, press delete button on your keyboard. Now watch what happens when I move my mouse to the small square in the bottom right corner of the cell. When I hover over it, the cursor changes into a small black cross. This is called the fill handle. I can click and drag the fill handle to the right. As I drag, Excel shows a preview of the value that will be entered into each cell. I'll continue dragging until the preview shows December. Once I've reached the last month, I will release the mouse button and Excel automatically fills in all the remaining months for me. Let's enter the category labels. To do that, let's click on cell A3 and type the value food. Let's press tab key to move to the next cell and put the value for Jan 320 for example. For Feb I'll put 295. I'll fill the rest of the values and come back in a second. Once you have reached December value, you can simply press enter and Excel automatically takes me down to the next row, starting again from column A. The important thing to understand here is that we are using the tab and enter keys together as a data entry workflow. Use tab to move across the row as you enter your data, and when you reach the end of row, press enter to move down to the next row and start entering data again. Once you get used to of this tab and enter combination, you will find that you can enter large amounts of data without needing to touch the mouse. Now let's fill in the second row. Let's put the second category of rent. Our monthly expense is fixed amount of $500. We could type 500 in every cell manually, but there's a much quicker way. Let me delete all the values and go back to Jan. Now I need to select the remaining cells across the row. Instead of dragging with the mouse, I'll hold down the shift key and press the right arrow key to extend the selection. I'll keep on pressing the right arrow until all the month cells are selected. Now I'll press Ctrl R. Excel instantly copies the value from the first cell across all the selected cells to the right, and that's what the word R in the shortcut key combination means, R for right. In the same way, we can use Ctrl D to copy a value down a column. Let me delete these values. That was only to demonstrate you the shortcut key combination. Although we initially entered food in cell A12, we later decided it should be food and grocery. There are few important things to remember when editing cell contents. If I click on a cell once and start typing, Excel replaces the existing cell content. Let me click on cell A12 and start typing. For example, I'll type oops, error. Notice that the original text has been replaced completely. Let me type food again. Now, what if I simply want to edit the existing text instead of replacing it? One way is to double click the cell. Excel places the cursor exactly where I double click, allowing me to edit only the part of the text. Let me remove all the extra zeros from the food. I had a typo in this. After making the changes, I'll press enter. If you prefer using the keyboard, you just select the cell and press F2 from your keyboard. This switches the cell into edit mode and places the cursor at the end of existing text, ready for you to make changes. So I'll type and grocery after that. You can also see edit displayed on the status bar while you are editing the cell. I'll remove this second row since it was only there for demonstration purposes. To do that, I'll select the cells in the second row by clicking and dragging across them, then press the delete key on the keyboard to clear their contents. Now I'll quickly populate the rest of the table with some dummy data, and I'll be right back so we can continue exploring more Excel features. So to summarize, tab moves the active cell to the right and enter moves the active cell down. We can also use the arrow keys to move left, right, up and down between cells. If we combine shift with these navigation keys, they work in the opposite direction. Shift tab moves the active cell to the left, while shift enter moves the active cell up instead of down. Now we have another issue. There are few cells where the text doesn't fit within the column because the column is too narrow. For example, food and grocery, Amazon and online shopping, and a few others. To fix this, I'll hover over the boundary between two column headers until the column resize handle appears, then simply double click. Excel automatically adjusts the column width to fit the longest value in that column. This feature is called Autofit. But what if we want to autofit the entire table instead? First, we need to select the columns. I'll click and drag across the column headers to select all the columns in my table. Now, when I hover over the boundary of any selected column, the column resize handle appears again. I'll simply double click and Excel automatically applies Autofit to every selected column at once. If I want a little more spacing, I can resize all the selected columns together by dragging the column resize handle to right or left. Although my data values now have a little bit of a more breathing space, The category column still has a text which is being chopped, so I'll use the Autofit option for that. So we can mix and match too. Now let's learn how to select cells, rows and columns. To select a range of cells, simply click and drag from the first cell to the last cell in the range. Every range in Excel has a range reference, which is written as the starting cell followed by a colon and then the ending cell. For example, this range is A2 colon M9. You'll see range references throughout Excel, especially when working with formulas and macros, etc. To select an entire row, move your mouse over the row number until the pointer changes to a black selection arrow, then click. To select multiple rows, simply click and drag over the row numbers. Selecting column works in exactly the same way. Move your mouse over the column headers until the black selection arrow appears. Then click and drag to select multiple columns. If you prefer using keyboard, press Ctrl spacebar to select the current column or Shift spacebar to select the current row. You can then hold Shift key and use the arrow keys to extend the selection in any direction. Let's quickly look at the different types of cell handles and pointers in Excel. This is the selection pointer. It looks like thick white plus. It is Excel's default cursor for selecting cells. Click a cell to make it the active cell, or click and drag to select a range of cells. The active cell or selected range is surrounded by a green selection border. This border identifies the current selection. For simplicity, we can refer to this as the selection handle. Notice the difference between the selection pointer, the thick white plus used to select cells, and the selection handle, the green border around the active cell or selected range. At the bottom right corner of the selection border, you'll find the fill handle, the small square mainly used to copy data. When you hover over the fill handle, the pointer changes to a thin black plus known as the autofill pointer. Remember the difference. The fill handle is the small square, while the autofill pointer is the cursor that appears when you hover over it. Finally, when you hover over the edge of the selected cell or range, the pointer changes into the move pointer. It is represented by a 4-headed arrow. Drag it to move the selected cells to a new location. Let's move it back to where it was originally. This works for both a selected range and a single active cell. Let's type total here in cell N2 for the yearly total of expenses and monthly total here in cell A10. Select cell N3 and click AutoSum. You can find the AutoSum button on the Home tab under the Editing group or on the Formulas tab under the Function Library group. As soon as you click AutoSum, Excel automatically inserts a calculation and selects the range it believes should be included. Notice the selected range is highlighted with matching ants, making it easy to identify which cells are being used. If Excel has selected the correct range, simply press Enter to calculate the total. If it ever selects the wrong range, simply click and drag to select the correct cells before pressing Enter. Now let's move to the cell N4 and use the keyboard shortcut Alt = sign. This is much quicker way of applying AutoSum without using the ribbon. AutoSum is extremely convenient, but have you ever wondered what Excel actually inserts behind the scenes? Before we answer that, let's learn how to create our own calculations. Go to the cell B10. Every calculation in Excel starts with an equal sign. Let's create one ourselves. We will add these numbers manually, so let's type them. Once we have inserted all the values and we have completed our calculation, we can press the Enter button to calculate our result. This is called formula because it's a calculation that we have written ourselves. So remember, a formula is any calculation you create in Excel. A function is a predefined formula that's already built into Excel. We'll look at functions in just a moment. Although manually typing numbers works, it isn't very practical. Imagine one of these expenses. Let's take the example of petrol price. If we change that to 95, you would see that our total calculation is still same because we have manually typed it. Let's change that back to 85 again. So a much more better approach is to use cell references instead. Go to cell C10 and type equal sign. Now click cell C3, type a plus sign, click cell C4, type another plus sign, then continue with C5. You don't always have to click the cells. You can also type the cell references yourself. For example, we can type C cell ourselves. Notice Excel immediately recognizes the reference and highlights that cell with a colored border. Personally, I find selecting cells quicker and less prone to typing mistakes, but you may prefer typing the references manually. Choose whatever workflow works best for you. You'll also notice that every cell reference has a different color and the corresponding cells are outlined using the same colors. This color coding makes formulas much easier to read and helps you quickly identify which references belongs to which cell. Let's complete the remaining references. Press enter when you are finished. Let's see why cell references are so useful. Let's change the petrol price of 90 to 95 and keep an eye on the total. Notice the total updates automatically without changing the formula. Thus, because Excel automatically recalculates formulas whenever the values they reference change, this is one of Excel's most powerful features. Even though this method is much better than manually typing numbers, there is still an easier way. Let's change the value to 90 again. Instead of adding every cell reference individually, we can use one of the Excel's built-in functions. Go to cell D10, type equal to sign and then type sum. As you type, Excel displays a list of suggested functions. Use the up and down arrow keys to move through the list. When sum is highlighted, press tab to insert it. Excel automatically inserts the parentheses for you. Now simply click and drag to select the cells from D3 to D9. Then press enter. Notice how much shorter and easier this formula is. Earlier we said that a function is a predefined formula built into Excel. Sum is one of the most commonly used functions because it adds all the values within a range automatically. A range simply means two or more cells. As we have discussed earlier, ranges are written using the first cell reference, which in this case is D3, followed by a colon, and then the last cell reference, which is D9 in our case. Now let's go back to very first AutoSum we created in cell N3. Click the cell and look at the formula bar. Notice the formula Excel created. Hopefully this now makes perfect sense. AutoSum simply inserted the same sum function that we have just learned to write ourselves. The only difference is that AutoSum automatically selected the range for us. If you ever want to verify that a formula is referencing the correct cells, click the cell containing the formula, then click on one of the references in the formula bar. Excel highlights the corresponding range in the worksheet, making it easy to visually confirm that your formula is using the correct cells. In this case, our range is correct. There's one final time-saving feature. Once you have created the formula in one cell, you don't need to recreate it for every month. Hover over the fill handle until the pointer changes into a thin black plus, then drag across remaining months. Excel copies the formula and automatically adjusts the cell references for each column while preserving the same calculation pattern. This is called relative referencing and is one of the biggest reasons Excel can save so much time. Now that we have finished entering our data, let's format the table to make it easier to read and more visually appealing. We'll start with the heading. First, let's change the font of the entire table. Select the whole table by clicking and dragging, then go to the font box. You can either type the font name and click enter or choose one from the drop-down list. Excel provides a wide range of fonts, so you can experiment and choose one that best suits your worksheet. I'll use Arial. Next, let's format the heading. Select the heading cells across to column H. To make it stand out, I'll increase the font size using the increase font size button. You can also reduce it using the decrease font size button. I usually use these buttons to quickly preview different sizes before settling on one I like. I'll keep mine at 24 points. Now let's make the heading bold by clicking the bold button and then change the font color to give it a bit more emphasis. I think the heading would stand out even more with a thick bottom border. Click the borders drop down and choose thick bottom border. This menu also includes a draw border option if you prefer to draw borders manually. I want the bottom border to match the color of my heading text, so I'll customize it. Click more borders at the bottom of the drop down. This opens the format cells dialog box on the border tab. Let's choose the line style you want. I'll go with this style. Then select a line color. So I have selected the same color as my heading now. Notice the preview lets you see exactly how the border will look before applying it. I'll click only the bottom border in the preview, so the formatting is applied to the bottom edge only, and then click OK. Now there's a little space between the heading and the table, so let's insert a blank row. This is also a great opportunity to learn how to insert and delete rows and columns. To insert a row, select the row directly beneath the heading, right click and choose Insert. Excel inserts a new row above the selected row. To remove it, right click the row again and choose Delete. You can also do this from a Home tab by clicking Insert and selecting Insert Sheet Rows, or remove it using Delete and then Delete Sheet Rows. Keyboard shortcuts make this even quicker. Press Ctrl plus to insert rows or columns and Ctrl- to delete them. For columns, select the column immediately to the right of where you want the new column to appear. Then use the right click menu or the shortcut keys. You can also use the Insert and Delete buttons on the Home tab. These menus are context sensitive, so their options change based on what you have selected. If a row is selected, you will see options such as Insert Sheet Rows or Delete Sheet Rows. If a column is selected, these options automatically change to Insert Sheet Columns and Delete Sheet Columns. I would insert the sheet column here. Before we continue, let's fix a small mistake in our formulas. The budget values should not be included in the total expenses calculation. This row was only added for comparison. Select cell E11, click inside the formula in the formula bar, and Excel highlights the referenced range with the blue border. You can drag this border to change the reference cells, and notice how the formula updates automatically as you move it. To resize the range, move the pointer over one of the border edges until it changes to a double-headed arrow. Then click and drag to extend and reduce the selection. In our case, we will change the range from E4 to E9 rather than E10. Once the formula is corrected, copy it across remaining cells in the row. To do that, I'll use the autofill option. I'll drag this on the other side too. Excel automatically adjusts the cell reference for each column, and you can double check it too. After copying the formulas, you may notice a green triangle in the top left corner of the cells. When you select one of these cells, the error checking button, a yellow diamond with an exclamation mark appears. Click on the down arrow and it would show you different options. This is Excel's built-in error checking feature. In this case, it's warning us that the formula omits an adjacent cell because row 10 was intentionally excluded. Excel assumes this might be an accidental omission and alerts you just in case. Since we excluded that row on purpose, this isn't an actual error. We can simply ignore error, and then we can see that the error checking options have disappeared now. Although we don't need the warning here, this is a very useful Excel feature. It automatically checks your formulas, flags potential issues, and helps catch mistakes before they become problems. We can do that for the rest of the cells too with the error message. We can select them all together and then click on the down arrow next to the diamond and select an option called Ignore Error, and it will remove the error message triangle from all of these cells in one go. Let's continue with our formatting now. First, we'll format the heading row containing the month names. Select the header row, then choose dark blue fill color. Next, change the font color to white. so the text stands out clearly, and finally click bold to make the heading easier to read. Now let's create alternating or branded rows to make the data easier to follow. Select row 5 and apply a light blue fill color. This is a great opportunity to introduce one of Excel's most useful formatting tools, the Format Painter. Select row 5, then click the Format Painter button with the paintbrush icon. Your mouse pointer changes to a paintbrush. Now click and drag across row 7 to copy the same formatting. There's another useful feature I would like to show you. This time select row 5 again, but double click the Format Painter button. This keeps the Format Painter active, allowing you to apply the same formatting to multiple ranges. Click and drag across row 9, then row 11. When you are finished, press Escape on your keyboard or click the Format Painter button again to turn it off. Now let's look at another useful command on the Home tab, the Clear button. So far you have seen that Excel allows you to copy not only cell contents but also formatting using the Format Painter. In a similar way, the Clear command lets you remove different parts of cell without necessarily deleting everything. Select row 11, click the drop down arrow next to Clear button and choose Clear Formats. Notice that only the formatting is removed while the cell contents remain unchanged. Press Ctrl Z to undo the change. Now select row 11 again, open the Clear menu one more time and this time choose Clear Contents. Notice only the data is removed while the formatting stays in place, so our row still has the fill color of light blue color. Press Ctrl Z again to revert the changes. In this Clear menu, you would also notice an option called Remove Hyperlinks, which removes hyperlinks but leaves the displayed text intact. Finally, select row 11 again and choose Clear All option from the Clear menu. As you can see, this removes everything from the selected cells, including the contents, formattings, comments and hyperlinks. Press Ctrl Z once more to restore the worksheet. Let's revisit a few keyboard shortcuts and explore them in a bit more detail. We already know that Ctrl arrow keys let you jump to the end of a row or column. However, there's an important detail that I intentionally saved until now because it makes more sense once we have started working with data. These shortcuts behave differently depending on whether you are inside a data block or moving through empty cells. For example, if I press Ctrl right arrow while I'm inside our table, Excel jumps to the last populated column of that data block. If I press Ctrl right arrow again, now that the next cell is empty, Excel jumps all the way to the last column of the worksheet. The same behavior applies to Ctrl left, Ctrl up and Ctrl down. Now if you add Shift key, these shortcut becomes selection shortcuts. For example, starting from cell B4, pressing Ctrl Shift right arrow selects all the cells across row 4 within our table. Similarly, pressing Ctrl Shift down arrow from cell B4 selects the entire category column in our table. Here are a couple of other very useful shortcuts for working with a data block, whether it's a normal range or an Excel table. Ctrl A selects the entire current data block. If you are working inside an Excel table, pressing it once selects the data table and pressing it a second time selects the entire sheet. Ctrl Shift End selects from the active cell to the bottom right corner of the current data block. For example, click on cell A1 and press Ctrl Shift End. Excel selects everything from A1 to P11, which is the bottom right cell of our table. If you leave out the Shift key and press Ctrl End, Excel simply jumps to the bottom right cell without selecting anything. The Shift key is what extends the selection. Likewise, if you are at the bottom right corner and press Ctrl Shift Home, Excel selects everything back to the top left corner of the data block. And once again, if you omit Shift key and press Ctrl Home, Excel simply moves the active cell back to the starting location without making a selection. We could have automated much of the formatting we just did. The main reason I formatted everything manually was to introduce you to Excel's formatting tools and help you become familiar with the interface. From this point onwards, many of the features you'll see will be covered in much greater detail in dedicated videos. The goal here is to give you an overview of typical Excel workflow and a first taste of some of the intermediate and advanced features available in Excel. Let's first add the missing header category in cell B3. I forgot to label our category column earlier. Now copy the entire table, open a new worksheet and paste values. You can do this from right click menu or by pressing the shortcut keys of Ctrl Shift V or from Home tab from paste values. Let me auto fit column A. Notice that only the values are pasted. None of the formatting comes across. This gives us a clean data set to work with. Now click anywhere inside the data and press Ctrl T from your keyboard, or you can also go to a Home tab and use an option called Format as Table. In my case, I prefer using Ctrl T shortcut keys. Excel displays the Create Table dialog box and automatically detects the data range. In most cases, Excel does an excellent job of selecting the correct range. If the selection is incorrect, simply drag to select the proper range manually. In our case, the correct range is selected automatically. Since our data includes headers, make sure My Table has headers is checked and then click OK. Instantly, Excel converts the range into a proper Excel table and applies professional formatting automatically. As soon as your data becomes a table, a new Table Design contextual tab appears on the ribbon with additional options. From here, you can show or hide the header row, add or remove the total row, and enable or disable the banded rows, and choose from a variety of built-in table styles. In our case, I'll leave it as default. Because your data is in a structured table, creating charts becomes much easier. Simply select any cell in the table and go to Insert tab to create a chart. In our case, let's select one of the charts from here. I'll just go with this first one. This chart is being created here just for a demonstration. I would remove it now by clicking Delete on my keyboard. Tables also make it incredibly easy to summarize your data using a pivot tables. To create one, select any cell in the table and choose Summarize with Pivot Table from Table Design contextual tab, or you can go to Insert tab and select an option called Pivot Table. In my case, I always prefer to use Summarize with Pivot Table. This dialog box is just showing you the selected range and giving you an option to select either a new worksheet or an existing worksheet to place your pivot table. I'll leave it as default and press OK. Excel would open a new worksheet for us with the pivot table inside it. Once the pivot table is created, drag the category field into the rows area and total field into the values area. Congratulations! You have created your first pivot table. You can see it's giving us the yearly total sum of the categories. To visualize it, click Pivot Chart from the Pivot Table Analyze tab, which should have been opened automatically once you have selected the pivot table. Choose any chart type that you like. For this demonstration, I'll use a simple clustered column chart. Don't worry if you didn't fully understand everything in this final section. At this stage, I simply want you to understand the typical Excel workflow. As a first step, we enter or import our data. Then we convert the data into an Excel table. Then we create a pivot table to summarize it, and then create charts or pivot charts to visualize our results. As you have seen, the overall process is quite intuitive. There's no rocket science involved, just a few powerful tools that work together. We'll explore tables, charts, pivot tables, and many other Excel features in dedicated videos throughout this course. This lesson was simply an introduction, but I hope it has given you a solid understanding of the fundamentals and inspired you to continue learning the more intermediate and advanced features of Excel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue exploring another exciting aspect of Excel. Until then, have fun and happy learning. Bye.